The Rugrat theory starts this dark list off in at number 10. This disturbing theory about the Rugrats have been circulating around the internet for many years. A lot of you guys probably already know. Basically, it says that all of the characters from our beloved 90s cartoon series, they're all dead and they're just all figments of Angelica's diabolical imagination. Okay, wait, what? You're telling me that Tommy and Chucky are actually dead? Well, according to this theory, Chucky died in 1986 with his mother, and that's why his father is a nervous wreck. Tommy was born in 1988, but he was a stillborn. That's why his father is constantly in the basement building toys for his son that he never got a chance to live. And twins were actually aborted in the 1990. I mean, I think my childhood is literally ruined now, and it's only the start of this list. Well, Krabby Patty's meat slides onto this list at number 9. According to a fan theory on Twitter, Krabby Patty's secret formula is a kept secret for a very obvious reason. Well, his secret formula is crabs. I mean, think about it. The only other crabs that we ever see in the show are the occasional out-of-town crab, Mr. Krabs himself, and his mother. I mean, where the heck are the rest of the crabs? Well, I'll give you guys a hint. They're in the burger. If that is true, then that makes Mr. Krabs a cannibal and he's just rolling in the dough. Alright guys, it actually gets worse than that. Just look at the Krusty Krab restaurant. Doesn't it look familiar to you guys? It looks exactly like a crab trap. I'm literally shook on this one. I don't think I can enjoy the show anymore. I mean, that is pretty insane, but pretty plausible. All of the Thornberrys were on drugs, and this brings us to number 8. I'm honestly not surprised with this one. First off, we have a little girl who thinks she can talk to animals, and we have a weird emo teenager, a child who is from the wild in Nigel Thornberry. I don't know, but there's something off with this guy. So this theory helps explain what's going on. In the show they say that Eliza's spell was cast by a witch that lets her talk to animals. But I think the witch just gave her acid. I mean, this theory goes on to say that Nigel is on crack, which explains how he's so damn energetic, and Debbie might be on coke, which is why she's so irritable. She eats a lot and she never wants to be bothered. I think the Thornberrys should be sent to rehab like immediately. Roger from Doug was abused as a child, and this takes us to number 7. This theory tries to explain why Roger was such a bully on the show. There are a ton of people who believe that Roger's mean spirit and bullying derived from him being abused and neglected from his parents. That's why he tried to form his own family with all of the other bullies on the show. I mean, things just got real. Psychologists say just about all aggressive bullies are victims of bullying themselves, which almost always involves a family member or a close acquaintance. I never realized how serious cartoons could be until I started doing research for this video. I was like, whoa. The Fairly Odd Parents flies into our list at number 6. Okay guys, prepare yourselves for this one, because this next theory will have you questioning your childhood. The Fairly Odd Parents was a show about a 10-year-old boy who is neglected by his parents and tortured by his babysitter. But one day he was granted 2 fairy godparents named Cosmo and Wanda, who granted him every wish. I know growing up I watched this cartoon all the time. Well, it sounds like a miserable premise for a show, doesn't it? Well, what if I told you that these 2 godparents were actually just his imagination and the result of drugs? Well, apparently Cosmo and Wanda are metaphors for the antidepressants Zoloft and Prozac. It could also be argued that when his wishes don't go as planned, those are just the side effects of misusing the drugs. Okay, now that my childhood is over, let's move on. Alright, number 5 brings us over to the show Caillou, and let's talk about Caillou's baldness. I know I'm not the only one wondering why this whiny kid is still bald at the age of 4 years old, but as it turns out, there is a dark explanation for this. This theory has been around for years, and it says that Caillou actually has cancer. I mean, I actually kind of feel really bad for calling him a whiny kid. Although Caillou is aware that he has cancer, he uses his imagination all the time to go on adventures because he's not sure whether or not he'll be able to grow up. If that wasn't dark enough for you guys, some users actually believe that Caillou is already dead, and that's why his grandmother is the one telling stories about his life. She wants to keep the memory of her grandson alive. I mean, is this real life right now? Arnold's parents come crashing onto this list at number 4. And of course we're talking about the show Hey Arnold. Well, according to one crazy dark theory, Hey Arnold's parents died from a drug overdose. I mean, wait, what? Well, people believe that his parents are gone because they were drug addicts, which explains why Arnold's head is disfigured. His grandparents couldn't bear to tell him the truth about their death, so they just made up a story so that his parents would look like heroes. The show is actually full of ton of dark theories, so if you guys want us to do a standalone video on this one, I mean, we could do a top 10 individually on this one, let me know in the comment section below. And also let us know what top 10 videos you guys would like to see next in the comment section. Dora the Explorer brings us to number 3. This show has helped a ton of children learn about nature, animals, and Spanish. This show is super popular with kids. It's how I learned to say hola. But with all good things, there is also a dark side. Many people believe that Dora has some mental health issues. People believe that she is imagining all of these adventures and characters from a mental institution, and they also believe that she hallucinates a lot. That's why it could be argued that she's talking to herself and hearing voices in her head from the audience. Mr. Dink is a predator, and this scary thought brings us to number 2. Well, Mr. Dink, for you guys who don't know, it's a character from a show called Doug. I remember this one like a little bit. Well, he's a middle-aged man who always seems to be around Doug. He can be seen at school and at home since they're neighbors. Some might say that they have a good teacher-student relationship, but one user on creepypasta wiki page has a more dark conclusion to this. In his theory, he says that Mr. Dink is a creeper who is trying to groom Doug, and so now, after being a victim, Doug becomes addicted to LSD to cope with the stress. So that explains a lot of his weird daydream scenes from the show. They're all just Doug tripping after taking drugs. I guess it's a simple explanation for that one, but a pretty dark theory. Timmy is a mistreated child, and this takes us to number 1. Here's another dark theory from the Fairly Odd Parents. Well, apparently Timmy is a young kid with an extremely rough life. His grandparents died in a car crash when he was younger, so that's why he imagines that they are watching over him, because his parents obviously don't care about him. Okay, but no, seriously, I think they need to call CIS on his family. His parents are so neglectful that they even hired a babysitter who physically and mentally abuses him. Oh yeah, and this dark theory goes on to say that Mr. Crocker, his mentally unstable teacher, might be a child predator who's attempting to steal his innocence. And he has made many attempts to lure him. I mean, pretty damn gross. I never knew Timmy had it so rough. I feel really bad for the kid.
Number 10, Drake and Josh, Josh is gone. We're actually going to kick off this list with a show that I have never seen before. Really for 2 reasons. This show was a little after my time. By the time this show came out, I had learned what HBO was. And when things like The Sopranos are on TV, Drake and Josh just doesn't really cut it. And 2, when I was younger, I didn't really want to watch shows with real people in them. They just seemed boring to me. Why would I watch a show about 2 brothers bickering when Moses was splitting the Red Sea with a Beyblade? Much better television. But in the episode Josh is Gone, Drake and Josh have a major falling out that ruins their friendship. And throughout the episode, we see Drake's life unravel until he reaches a major breaking point. At the end of the episode, they hang out again, but the friendship isn't entirely repaired. The whole episode kind of has this dark underlying tone that sometimes you lose your friends, and in real life, these guys aren't even friends anymore. Number 9, Adventure Time Apocalypse. Now this one doesn't cover a specific episode because there are so many episodes in Adventure Time that reference the world that existed before the Candy Kingdom.
Hey, good morning. I made you breakfast. It's mostly pine needles and deer guts.
Oh, you're even worse.
Basically, it seems like there was a full contemporary metropolis that was very similar to our world, but there was a massive disaster. Kinda like that gigantic asteroid that barely missed the Earth last week. Yeah, that one that was the size of the Statue of Liberty that would have wiped out an entire continent. If you don't know about that, give it a quick Google search. It'll remind you that nothing matters. But back to Adventure Time. Throughout the show, we get flashbacks to what the world used to be like, and we even get exposed to what happened to all the people. It seems like everyone got turned into some sort of zombie-like creature with green goo oozing out of their faces. Now on to number 8. We got Rocco Goes to Hell. Rocco's modern life was great. You had a well-dressed wallaby who was best friends with a cow, and the two would go on some pretty strange adventures together. But in one episode, Rocco Goes to Heck, we see the show take a pretty dark turn. Rocco's best friend Heifer chokes to death and ends up in hell. Let's just start there. Having your friend choked to death in front of you is a pretty horrible thing to see. You would have to spend plenty of paychecks on therapy to have that one scrubbed from your brain. Then we go to after Heifer dies, and is inside Hell, which in the show is named Heck for the younger viewers. Once Heifer arrives in the burning underworld, we get to meet Peaches, who is the Rocko's Modern Life version of the devil. Peaches then starts to do what I assume the devil does best, which is, of course, torture. This then leads us to watching Heifer going through all sorts of strange torments. I think letting kids know that they could be thrown into hell at any moment is a little bit much to take on. Let them find out they're going straight to hell like the rest of us. Number 7. The Danny Phantom opening credits. Having ghost powers is a great original concept. We don't really know what ghosts are or even if they exist, so you can play around with it as much as you want. And he had a very diverse group of friends in the show. The show was really ahead of its time. But what if the backbone of the show, the accident that gave Danny his ghost powers, didn't actually happen?
When it didn't quite work, his folks they just quit. But then Danny took a look inside of it. There was a great big flash, everything just changed. His molecules got all rearranged.
Well, the accident happened, but instead of giving him ghost powers, it sent him blasted into a coma, and all the crazy adventures he goes on are just figments of his imagination in a coma state. There have been cases of people in comas where they can hear what's going on around them. So maybe Danny Fenton is in a coma and all the different characters that are around him are the doctors, nurses, and visitors that are coming in to see him. Maybe the reason he goes between ghost and human form is because he's constantly on the edge of life and death. Number 6. Episode 29 of The Amanda Show. The Amanda Show was one of the best kids sketch shows of all time. It set up Amanda Bynes to be one of the biggest comedy stars ever. But then of course her life took a turn for the wild side and she started saying things about how she wanted to bang Drake. Then she got those permanent dimple piercings, you know, those ones that make you look like you never say no to bathroom drugs. Well, before all this went down, her show had an episode with themes that were a little bit more on the risky side. In episode 29 of The Amanda Show, it starts out with an Italian man who explodes out of nowhere. Then later in the episode, it's followed by a sketch with a family known as the Luckless. They are so unlucky that nothing lucky ever happens to them. This sketch ends with a meteor smashing into the Luckless's home and destroying it. Now on their own, these sketches aren't too bad, but if you wrap in the fact that this episode aired right before 9/11, then you can see why it was taken off the air. A man blowing himself up and a flying object destroying a building would have for sure been in bad taste. And the underlying theme that people might think is there is that it's all conspiracy theory and the Amanda Show people were trying to tell us what was gonna happen. Probably not, but who knows. Number 5. Steve Does Drugs. Blue's Clues. By the time Blue's Clues came out, I was already too old. The anime era had grabbed me, and I wasn't some juvenile kid anymore watching baby shows. I was an angsty preteen who would cry if he misplaced one of his shiny Pokemon cards. Much more mature. But I do know that the show is about a guy walking around his house talking to inanimate objects trying to find clues. He's doing this because it's a fun way to teach kids. Or is the dark message behind the show that Steve is a former detective who worked a case so disturbing that it broke him mentally? Now he spends his days dosing himself with enough drugs to hallucinate and forget the case that tore him down. The detective theory explains why a grown man is so interested in clues, and the drugs explain why he can talk to salt shakers. Either that or he has the worst superpower of all time. I would like to see a dark noir version of Blue's Clues where Steve is trying to solve the murder of a young girl and he has to beat answers out of a fire hydrant. That would be interesting. Number 4 is SpongeBob Dying for Pie. So how did all the characters in the SpongeBob universe come to be sentient beings with complex emotions and an entire society similar to our own? Is it all made up? Or is it because they're sea creatures that got blasted with nukes and now they all got mutated? That's how life starts, right? You blast things with nuclear energy and then everyone gets smarter. Well, the theory is that the underwater world of Bikini Bottom got all of its super intelligent life forms from nuclear bomb testing. This theory is kind of backed up by the episode Dying for Pie, where SpongeBob has a pie with a bomb in it, and when it goes off, it's a nuclear level explosion.
I was saving it in my pocket for us to share. Let's eat. Oops.
This would mean that the people in Bikini Bottom have access to nukes and could be the next global superpower. You don't just get nukes out of nowhere. Maybe they got access to nukes from a failed nuclear test where the bomb didn't go off. They then took it and made themselves someone to be respected at the next UN meeting. Number 3, iCarly. the Nora Dershlit episodes. This is another show that I've never seen before, guys, but I'm pretty sure I get what the show is about. Some girl has some sort of web show and it's kind of famous and she's got a whole bunch of zany friends and her parents are probably pretty goofy too. Basically the same as every other kid's show, but it's about an internet celebrity. Well, one episode dove into something that is actually a real risk for celebrities and influencers: stalkers. People are willing to buy your old toothbrush off of eBay and stand too close to you when they talk. In the episode, a superfan, Nora Dershlit, kidnaps Carly and a few of her friends. She keeps them locked in her home. Where's this girl's parents? In the show, it's very fun and playful, and eventually they all escape in the most unlikely way. I swear I could write kids shows blackout drunk. But what's freaky about this stuff is that it happens all of the time, especially now with everyone and their dog becoming some sort of influencer. People are constantly being stalked, attacked, and sometimes even killed. Think about that before you link your location in your next Instagram post. Number 2, Mr. Dink from Doug is a predator. So on the first day of Doug moving into his new neighborhood, he meets his neighbor Mr. Dink. And what's the first thing that Mr. Dink does to the 11-year-old boy that he just met?
Do you have time to watch the official Welcome to Bluffington video? It's short and informative.
Well, my family's starving and I really...
Well, of course you do.
Well, he invites him in to watch a movie all by himself. My god, dude, this is wrong on so many levels. In later episodes, Mr. Dink becomes Doug's Boy Scout leader, which is basically a child molester's dream job. And of course his name is Mr. Dink. How many more warnings do you need? Number 1, Degrassi. Holy! Degrassi touches on so much at one school. We have teen pregnancies, fights, sexual assaults, even Drake gets shot. The dude gets shot and put into a wheelchair. My school was nothing like this. People were all cool with each other, even the pregnant ones. There's too much going on in this show just to pick one episode, but all the hidden meanings are basically that growing up is super hard and you should always wear a condom. Number 10, SpongeBob SquarePants Plankton Paranoia. The king of the meme world, SpongeBob has been on for so long, it has touched so many generations, and now is the granddaddy of the internet in more ways than one. In the episode Plankton Paranoia, we see Mr. Krabs go off the deep end. Again, it's not unusual for the crustaceous business owner to lose it. He's about as stable as Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with the Clintons. In this episode, we really see his mind unravel like a fruit roll-up. It goes from Mr. Krabs setting new rules in the Krusty Krabs to straight up hallucinations. This level of paranoia makes me think old Eugene Harold Krabs was hitting the crack pipe after closing time. Although this is a kids show and everything is exaggerated, the episode really dives deep into what someone suffering from severe paranoia or schizophrenia might look like. Number 9, Rugrats, Chucky's Wonderful Life. Now we move on to a cartoon that had one of the best opening songs ever. The music went off on that xylophone. It probably lit on fire by the time it was done. But in the episode we see the show take a dark turn. It starts off with Angelica telling Chucky everyone's lives would be better if he was never born. So he packs up all his stuff in a little hobo sack and heads out for the open road. Then he's confronted by his guardian angel to show him what the world would really look like without him, and let me tell you, it's harsh. We start with his dad, who's now single and only lives with sock puppets. I don't think he's getting laid anytime soon. Girls don't usually get hot and heavy over googly eyes glued to fabric. Then we see that Phil and Lil have turned into punks who probably mosh super hard and yell at their mom. And to top it all off, Tommy is homeless and Angelica has packed on some pounds. She looks like Jabba the Hutt's fatter brother. The episode's basically saying you gotta love yourself, man. You're more important than you think. Number 8, My Life as a Teenage Robot, The Return of Raggedy Android. My Life as a Teenage Robot, a show that had it all. The action of Fast and the Furious with all the drama of Degrassi. In the episode Return of Raggedy Android, we see Jenny get kicked out of a diner because the owner doesn't want to serve robots. This has huge undertones of racism. I'm pretty sure the scene takes place in a 50s style diner to really send the message home. Don't forget that most of our grandparents used to be racist. They look all cute and sweet now with their Werther originals, but they used to say racial slurs behind everyone's back. So to avoid this problem, Jenny gets an exosuit that makes her look like a real human girl. But the suit has kinda symbiote properties like the symbiotes from Spider-Man. It has a mind of its own and evil intentions. The exosuit starts to tell Jenny not to save people because that's not what a normal girl would do. Which of course has the underlying message of how women are constantly told to be pretty little things that are nice to look at. So much is going on in this episode. Racism, sexism, Spider-Man ripoffs. I love it. Number 7, SpongeBob Nasty Patty. I'm gonna start off by saying the hidden message in this episode is don't lie, and you should confront your problems as soon as you have them because they'll only build up to be bigger problems if you don't. It starts off with Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob mistaking the health inspector for a criminal, so they basically try to poison him with a rancid Krabby Patty. They think they've killed him, so they try to dispose of the body. The police get involved, and then they have this whole series of comical moments while they're trying to hide the body while also simultaneously dealing with the police. Eventually we learn that the health inspector was alive the whole time and the Krusty Krab has passed its health inspection. But if SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs had confronted the health inspector about their suspicions at the beginning of the episode, none of this would have happened. Number 6, Ren and Stimpy, Stimpy's Fan Club. This show holds the title for taking it too far. It's got sexual themes, violence, disturbing images. All for me, it must be my birthday. In this particular episode, we see Ren have a psychotic breakdown because Stimpy gets more fan mail than him. This leads to Ren contemplating killing Stimpy with his bare hands by snapping his neck. At least he's nice enough to make it quick. The episode is basically touching on how jealousy can drive you crazy. Don't let it get to you. Instead of beating yourself up because someone has things that you don't have, take it easy and be grateful for what you do have. Or kill them in your sleep. Those are really your 2 options. Number 5, TMNT, Same as It Never Was. In this episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they get attacked and Donatello gets ripped through time. He ends up in a future world where everything is janky as hell. The Turtles' lair looks like a fraternity that had too many White Claws went and sent it through all the furniture. We find out that Master Splinter is dead, all the turtles are jacked up real bad, and Shredder has taken over the world and become the mascot for Shreddies. Everything has fallen apart because Donatello disappeared 30 years ago. Eventually this leads to an all-out assault on Shredder, with everyone dying except for April O'Neil and Donatello. Then Donatello gets warped back to his original time. The hidden message here is even if you feel like the Donatello in your group, even if you feel like a dork who never brings home the girl and uses a staff as his weapon of choice, you're still very important and you should feel valued. Number 4, Invader Zim, Dark Harvest. One of the darkest shows that ever was on Nickelodeon. The creators deliberately made the show more twisted to push back against the producers. People making something more offensive out of spite, that's my kind of entertainment. Like when everyone was telling Miley Cyrus to be a cute little Disney princess, so she decided to hoe it up for 3 years, by far the best part of the Miley saga. In this episode we see Zim taking organs from all the kids in an attempt to be more human. This could be the creators trying to comment on how people consume themselves with material possessions in order to feel more complete. But in the end you just have an empty hole in your heart. It doesn't matter how many live, laugh, love signs you buy, Nance. It's not gonna save your marriage. Or maybe this is just an episode about an alien eating kids. Who knows? Number 3, Kids Next Door, Operation Future. They're kids, they're spies, I love it. In the episode Operation Future, number 4 gets sent to a boarding school and soon finds out it's an all-girl boarding school, and then finds out the person running the school is secretly trying to turn all the boys in the world into girls. Wow, times have changed. Could you imagine a kids show today where they tried to change kids' genders against their will? The backlash would be insane. Both the left and the right would be sending off hateful tweets faster than that short guy who got owned in New York.
Go ahead and attack me! Oh my god.
The episode also has some pretty dated views on boys and girls, with the hidden message being that all boys are dirty and rough and all girls are soft and like pink stuff. Number 2, Legend of Korra, Venom of the Red Lotus. The whole Avatar series is incredible, and going beyond that the show is constantly touching on themes of racism, elitism, and tragedies of war, this episode in particular pushes the boundaries. Korra is kidnapped by the Red Lotus cult and tortured by them bending mercury into her body. She eventually escapes and the mercury is taken out, but the whole experience leaves her very traumatized and damaged, like every girl I've ever dated. And she's rough after this. Not like rough after you do too many Jaeger bombs, you wake up the next morning and you're so hungover that sound hurts your feelings. She needs real rehab and has PTSD. The episode touches on some of the real effects that trauma can have on a person, and the episodes after show how long it can take for someone to recover from a traumatic event. Number 1 on our list is Pokemon Sun and Moon, One Journey Ends, Another Begins. Okay guys, get ready for some feels. In this episode, Ash and Pikachu come across a Lin that is living under a bridge with an old and weak Stalin. Ash tries to save the older Stalin by taking it to a Poke Center, but eventually it escapes and returns to under the bridge to be with the Lin. Throughout the episode, we see the Stalin get weaker and weaker until eventually it passes away and leaves the Lin all on its own. The Lin goes through a bit of a depression, refusing to eat and refusing to leave the spot where the Stalin died. Eventually we have a rainy night followed by a sunny morning, and in the clouds we see a cloud that looks like Stalin, straight up Lion King. Remember. This gives the Lin the motivation it needs to keep on going. This episode will definitely hit hard for anyone who has ever said goodbye to a pet.